All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be covering AI broke your hiring process. Here's how to fix it. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. So Danielle is here with us today. She is going to be manning the chat and making sure that all of your questions are getting answered as we go. Just so you know, the webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to send the recording afterwards, and so you can share it with anyone else on your team who may find it relevant. And just go ahead and drop the questions into the Q&A as we go. So I am Catherine Woodhill. I lead marketing here at CoderPad, and I'm excited to have Frank and Nathan here with me today. Frank, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Frank. I lead product at CoderPad, so always interested in trying to help out our customers. And my partner in crime, to my, I guess, left, is Nathan. Nathan, you wanna?
Yeah, hey, my name's Nathan. I have had the pleasure of hiring and managing teams of all sizes over time. Also had the pleasure of only using CoderPad to do that before I actually worked here. So um, the thing I love about conversations like these and just working here is working through how to solve hiring problems for teams of all size, from gigantic to really, really small. So delighted to be here.
Great. So before we jump into our content, Danielle, do you mind putting that poll question up? We'd love to take a pulse of how cheat resistant all of you think your tech hiring process is. If you can go ahead and click an answer to the question, we can use that to really guide our conversation today. All right, we'll leave it open for just another couple of seconds. Love it if everyone could get their vote in. And Danielle, I am not seeing the results, so maybe if you close it, do you? All right. It looks like most of you think that your process is somewhat cheat resistant, about 50% of you. But a good chunk of you also said it's not very cheat resistant, or you really have no idea. So for everyone along that spectrum, we'll go ahead and cover content for, how do you know if it is cheat resistant all the way through, how do you really design the best hiring process possible? And with that, I will hand it over to Frank.
Yeah, so I think in this age, as the developer roles change and the tools that not just developers, let's be honest, that we all use nowadays, or at least according to my journal, a third of people who work in the U.S. Um, the question comes up, is using AI cheating? And our perspective is that it isn't. These tools are going to be more commonplace and should actually be brought into the interview. And I think whether that interview is async or interview is live. We're going to be talking about that, as well as, of course, the different monitoring features, because I think one of the reasons to use a tool like a CoderPad or similar is that we have this balance of, we brought this realistic environment where you can ask realistic questions, relevant questions, and get great signal, but we have a moderate environment. So there's a lot of stuff on the slide in front of you, and a couple snapshots from everyone's favorite place to go get content, Reddit. And so there's a couple. I think we don't live in a cave. We know that tools do exist to enable cheating. And here's a couple comments that you will find yourself if you were to dive into Reddit. The first one at the right is somebody was using one of these tools, Interview Coder. I believe they've now rebranded and gotten some money. I forget exactly what they're called nowadays, but you can jump to the second paragraph where you see that I am so pissed right now because I think I could have come up with a decent enough solution. This situation is somebody was going and using one of these cheating tools along with CoderPad on an interview at LinkedIn, and it was caught. And I guess I want to pair that with the bottom screenshot where the person says, "Hey, you know what? I tried to use one of these cheating tools, but the person says, I embarrassed TF out of myself." And goes on to talk about one of the things that I think is very important in that they were asked follow-up questions to explain their thinking, and that's where the logic fell down. And so I guess ultimately our belief is that using AI isn't necessarily cheating, that actually using a tool like ours that incorporates AI gets people to, it's one of those, if we're bringing these tools in, then they're less likely to rely on any unauthorized tools. And I guess I want to call your attention to the red bullets in the middle of the screen, that it's not just about monitoring, but it's also about asking realistic, relevant questions. Nathan's going to talk a little about this. Setting the right expectations with candidates. What can they use? What can't they use? And of course, training your interviewers. And I guess that brings it back to, again, that second screenshot where if I guess to read the quote, if you have a technical manager and can't explain in depth each line of your solution, you will get exposed in minutes. With that, we're going to start off with our screen product. And so, Nathan, you want to dive into that one?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to the next slide. That'll sort of intro things a little bit. So Frank talked a lot about this. I think at CoderPad, and we're going to start with screen. Frank will talk about this with the synchronous product in a little bit more detail. The assessments that are built out, both for synchronous and asynchronous tests, are designed to prevent cheating. But it's really completely dependent upon you designing, and we can partner with you on that, designing questions that really allow for a modern set of tools to be used. And whether we like it or not, all of these LLMs are something that every engineer is going to be using on a day-to-day basis, and it's a normal part of the developer tool set. So, creating assessments that is going to allow for them to use the tools that they do on a day-to-day basis is absolutely the thing. I think the thing that we do, the nudges that we give you in product, and I'll demo them in just a second, is really around giving you bits and pieces of information about, like, hey, this weird thing happened in this test. You might want to take a look here and see if you consider that cheating or not. And I think the thing before we dive into this that is important is, what I consider cheating could be dramatically different than what somebody else considers cheating. We have customers who don't allow for the use of external tools at all. I don't think that's a good idea, but that's their perspective. So in product, what we're trying to nudge you with is little bits and pieces of information to give you for you to make the decision on whether a candidate is doing something that you consider cheating or not. You can go to the next slide, Catherine. So before we do the demo, really the thing that is the most time intensive, but also the most important, is the quality of your questions that you ask a candidate, both in a live and in an asynchronous setting, is going to completely impact the signal you get out of those sessions. So if you ask them a question that is more academic or more leak code based, you aren't going to get the same amount of signal that you would get if you ask them a question that is realistic, allows them to use the tools that they would use on a day-to-day basis to do the job that you were interviewing them for. And so I think the thing when we demo all of this to keep in mind is really, you want to set up the questions that you're asking your candidates that are as close to day one on the job as possible. And sort of a corollary to that is, you should allow them to use the tools that they would use on the job, and LLMs and other coding assistive applications are part of the normal developer tool set. So the bottom headline, I think, is, I'm not going to say it out loud, but bad questions lead to bad answers, leads to a really, really bad signal. And the thing that you want is a really, really good signal about whether this particular person who's taking these assessments, whether they're live or not live, can do the job you're interviewing them for. So I'm going to steal this screen, and I'm going to go through a variety of things in our asynchronous product, which is called CoderPad Screen. and just give you an idea of some of the features that are available in product, to give you nudges about whether somebody is cheating and a variety of other things. So I am going to steal the screen. Catherine, give me 1 second. Okay, cool. Y'all can see my screen, right? Yes, great, good. All right, so first and foremost, just a little bit of an orientation. We are in the CoderPad screen dashboard. Product switcher is over here. Frank will go into interview in a moment. This is just a test that I set up with a subset of questions. We're going to go into randomization first for a moment. So this is the candidate view. So the questions that you ask a candidate can be completely customized. So we have a huge question bank of over 4,000 questions that you can lean upon to create your tests. You can also customize all of your questions. So if you want to ask a question that's outside of the question bank, that is hyper specific to the job that this person would be doing, you can create those, and everything in between, you can mix and match. I think the thing specific to cheating is that you can add what we call random blocks. So if you have a concern around maybe candidates trading notes between them that are interviewing for the same role over time, you can have your test set up in a way where you have a list of questions that are going to be asked of a candidate, and the questions are chosen at random. So the likelihood that candidate A and candidate B will get the exact same questions for example, the Java coding exercises is very, very low. You can also, if you want the signal to be exactly the same, ask them all the same questions, but it's just an option available to you in screen to potentially minimize cheating. So one other thing I want to jump into on each test that you send out, we have a variety of settings. The things I'm going to focus on are more around cheating. So by default, all of the unusual activity alerts are on. I'll dive into these in just a minute. You can, if you feel like copying and pasting is something you don't want candidates to do, you can absolutely block that so they can't copy and paste things into the IDE. If I were running an interview, I think copying and pasting from an external source is totally fine as long as they can follow up and answer the question. But if you feel differently, you can turn that on. Follow-up questions is a part of one of our add-on packages, and this is really cool, and I'll show you a demo of this in a second. So if a candidate, for example, solves a question in a really, really short amount of time, we will in real time generate a follow-up question with ChatGPT asking them to elaborate on their solution. And I'll show you what one of these looks like in just a minute. Another feature that we have is called webcam proctoring. Basically what this does is when a candidate comes in and starts a screen, they get a notification asking them to opt in, and what it does is it takes throughout the screen, it takes snapshots of them. So just like you're seeing me right now, we take snapshots over time, and then we will highlight things that we consider unusual that happen on the webcam. I'll show you some examples in just a minute. They can be multiple people on screen, candidate left the webcam for a while, just to give you an idea of, hey, did they bring somebody else in to take the exam? Do they have a friend helping them? Did they go off and grab a book on a shelf, if you consider that to be cheating? So it's just another feature to potentially prevent things you don't want happening during the screen, and we alert you of those. And then full screen mode is just if you want a candidate to be locked into a single screen, you can absolutely do that. So those are some of the features that you can configure at a test level. So each individual test has a set of questions, and each individual test has a group of candidates that you can send it to. And literally you just hit the send test button, name, email address, you can tag it if you want to. So, and typically we see customers structure these one test per role. So you want to send the same test out for a particular role you're hiring for. So diving into some of these features we looked at for the settings in just a minute. this is a demo test that Virginia set up. So when you click into each individual candidate, you get what's called a detailed report. One other thing that we do is we also collect location from when a candidate interacts with a screen. So we do track their IP. It shows you where they logged in from. This is helpful if you're worried about a candidate, potentially paying somebody to take an exam for them. So if Virginia opened the test and then you see it, 2 minutes later getting opened in the US after it was opened in France, that's a nudge about like, oh, hey, somebody else took this test. And we very clearly highlight that here. So for proctoring, we can take a look. So this test was short, but we highlight unusual things that happen during the proctoring session. So here, this is just pictures of her throughout the time. You can see that a webcam got turned off at one point. She left the webcam at another point. So it's just another feature that you can dig into a little bit to see if a candidate is doing anything weird while you're giving them an asynchronous screen. The other feature I wanted to highlight for a minute is the ChatGPT follow-up questions. So again, this is the detailed report. We looked at it just a minute ago in another test. You can click the detailed report, which is really quickly it is literally a full playback of each question that you ask the candidate. You can scrub through this in real time to see what the candidate did. You can see, like, I went outside of the environment a bunch just to show that I did that. The one interesting thing here is I spent on this question more than 50% of the time outside of the environment, which, just full disclosure, what I did is I had a ChatGPT window up on the side. I solved the problem with ChatGPT. I solved it in a very short amount of time. And because of that, the screen generated a follow-up question, basically saying, hey, explain yourself, in not an accusatory way, but hey, you solved this problem really, really quickly. You spent a bunch of time outside of the environment. And it asked me this, and I just, since it was fun, I said, I have no idea what to do here. So the purpose of this is really to, if we see any unusual activity take place during a coding assessment, to have the candidate expand upon how they solve the problem. Maybe they're brilliant and solved it in 5 seconds, and that's great. If so, they'll be able to explain why they solved it in the way that they did. So this is available as a part of one of our add-ons as a feature. It's really, really good if you're worried about people just using ChatGPT to cheat their way through an exam. The other thing I want to highlight here is we will never say that a candidate is cheating. That is up to you. We give you nudges about, hey, this is a little bit weird. You might want to take a look. So there is a checkbox to say, hey, we consider this cheating. We will never populate that for you. That is completely up to you. Like I said, like I started with, what is cheating to me might be different to you. So we leave that completely up to you. We just give you the nudges about like, hey, this is something we consider to be a little bit odd that happened in one of these questions that they answered. The other thing that I'm going to just talk through is we also do code similarity checking. So for lots of problems, the algorithmic problems, solutions have existed for these problems on the internet for 15, 20 years. And so what we do is we, across all screens that have been taken, throughout while we've been a company, we will literally scan across different solutions other people have provided in screens and see if literally character by character, they're solving it in exactly the same way. It'll be a similar alert saying, hey, this is a exact same solution we've seen across the platform. That's also another nudge that we give you in the case you would consider that cheating. I certainly would. If somebody's copying and pasting something from somewhere, it's very likely that they didn't come up with that solution on their own. And that, I'm going to give you the screen back, Catherine, and you can go to the next slide just to wrap it up really quickly, and then we can dig into interview. And go to the next. Yeah, so these are all the things that I talked through. Like I said, like we said at the top, AI is a normal part of the workflow for developers. I would expect some candidates to use it openly and honestly. In the case where you don't want them using that, and for screens, we certainly don't want candidates to just copy and paste solutions. We have a variety of features to be able to, show you if a candidate is doing something weird, both with copying and pasting code in and whether they're doing things like, bringing other people in the room when you've got proctoring on, if you want to enable test randomization to make sure that candidates don't share questions across a single role. And of course, IP tracking to make sure that the person that you're actually interviewing for the role is actually taking the screen. And that is it for asynchronous product, CoderPad screen. And I will hand it over to, I think, Frank's next.
Thanks. And so again, CoderPad screen is meant for high volume use. It happens earlier on in the interview process. You could think of this as your solution for top of funnel, and to decide who then progresses to the live interview stage. And so within the live interview stage, now you would be using CoderPad Interview, which is our synchronous product which lets you collaborate together and essentially solve different problems together in a technical manner, and to really understand how this person thinks and to go deeper, measure everything from those very technical skills where you can still code, but also those soft skills and how they communicate and interact and collaborate. So the slide that you see, just a few more slides, and we'll hop back into our interview product, has just some quick stats. So we do actually see quite a number of interviews in the millions every year. And so just a few quick stats you could see in the last 100,000 interviews. So this was a random sample. We had 50% left pad events, and so that's where we are tracking where somebody actually leaves the IDE, and 20% had external paste events. So we can track where somebody is pasting in something from outside. And so I think there may be valid reasons why somebody might leave the IDE or paste from elsewhere. Maybe they look something up, granted permission and so on. But these are the things that we can, of course, actively monitor and that we have features for. And so what we see here, the toggles that you see in the middle of the screen are from our organization settings. And those ultimately are where you would be able to turn on these features to be able to track these types of things. And then ultimately those track in those left pad events, those paste events, then show up after the interview in our playback mode. So in playback, we both highlight in our timeline of what's happening within the pad, each incident. And then we also have a summary where we summarize everything that happened in a pad, who joined, how long it took, and so on, those very summary stats, as well as everything from, you can see, sorry for the small font, but 3 left pad events totaling 47 seconds outside the pad, 2 paste events, 134 characters pasted. And so, of course, yes, maybe somebody just pasted in a quick blurb from elsewhere, or maybe they pasted in hundreds of lines of code. And so those can mean very different things. And what we hope to do is arm you with the right amount of signal to be able to understand what happened. Along with along with monitoring this environment, there's a couple other features that we have. So if you think back to when we would actually conduct interviews with people in person, you'd often have a recruiter meet them at the front door and escort them over to a conference room or your interviewing room or whatever. And so we have the virtual equivalent of that with our waiting room. And so what we encourage you, of course, to do is to enable this feature and to turn it on, and then also escorting out. So we also have features to make sure that this live URL where somebody is joining essentially shuts off. It's the equivalent of, in a Zoom ending this session. And so that kicks them out of a pad to make sure that they can't, try and do whatever it is and copy, paste, and share with others. And so those are a couple additional features that we encourage you to use, and I'll be demoing them here in a bit. But other things that go into understanding what went on. We also have an AI feature that, think of it as an AI note taker, similar to what you find in a Zoom or in a Gong or one of these other note-taking products. And so this works whether you use our native video calling within our application or whether you use, again, a third-party app like a Zoom or a Google Meet or anything like that. And so this both allows the interviewer to pay attention to the candidate and focus at the same use for these note takers, but also we take that transcript and we take the code and we run it through an engine to be able to actually help you submit feedback. We know that is a pain point for talent in working with anyone who's interviewing. You're often trying to say, hey, it's time to submit your feedback. Where's your feedback? And so we want to enable all of that to happen in a seamless way. And so we provide even this, it's something you can start with. It's fact-based. It's what happened within an interview, and it's a way to easily help somebody submit that feedback. I guess I'd be remiss, going back to those initial bullet points, if we didn't also say it has, having a proper experience to surface the best signal, but also to pull out, any untoward behavior, is both setting the proper expectations and training your interviewers. Again, with that Reddit point, it was as much that interviewer asking the candidate, "Oh, well, oh, that's a great solution. Tell me about it. Why don't you explain a little bit?" And that's where everything fell down. And so being able to train your interviewers to spot suspicious behavior, making sure that they don't just take the first answer, but that they ask some curious questions. And guess what? People want to have a conversation. They don't just want to get a question, here's my answer, move on next. People are looking to engage and have a conversation, and that's part of it. Last thing, and Nathan mentioned at the top, is shifting away from, and here I will say it, Nathan, shifting away from shit questions and asking realistic questions. Asking realistic, relevant content goes a long way to having a great interview experience. Now, if you're wondering, hey, what does it even mean and what does leak code mean and so on? So I don't often demo somebody else's product, but here it is from leetcode.com. And it's binary tree in order traversal. I can barely say what that is, and I certainly can't solve it, but I don't even understand what this means in real terms. This is not something I, as a product manager, would ever ask an engineer to do. And so if this is the type of question that you see that your team is asking, and it doesn't sound like your business, then it's probably not a good question. And just to give you a glimpse of now jumping into our product, what a good question might be. So what you see in front of you is our product. And so just to orient you very quickly, we are in CoderPad interview. We are in what you see on the left-hand side is a file tree. So this is similar to what you have. Everyone can see this, right?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Just wanted to make sure. So what you see in front of you is a environment that looks very much like the environment that devs operate in. And so on the left is the file tree, looks similar to Finder or Windows Explorer. Here's where you type in your code. And on the right is where we've rendered the application. And so this is a fully running application. You can see it reacts just as a web app would. And we built this in conjunction with one of our real estate customers to test, again, a real estate candidate. And so what you hope to do with these candidates is to show them a little bit give them a glimpse of what it would be like to work at your company and give them a flavor of the problems that you're working on. It gets them both excited, but also gives you the best signal. You're not asking what somebody else's problem is. You're asking them about your problems. And so in this environment, again, hopefully this helps solidify what do we even mean by realistic questions. This is a realistic question, and as real as it gets. It's working on solving real business problems. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the font a little bit bigger. One of the things we also talk about is not just trying to fight AI, but bring AI into the whole experience. And so what we mean by that is actually incorporating it as part of what you're asking candidates to do, both making it available for their use. And so you can see here's a window that is fully functional. Tell me about this application. Sorry, I can't spell. And so it is a fully interactable AI that understands, and you can see has full context of the code. It's talking about property listings and so on. And so in asking somebody to use this feature, both understand that this is fully monitored, so you can see everything that the candidate is asking. There's no uncertainty of, I left my window, but really what is it that you did outside of our environment? It's all in here. You're giving them this open book test because life is an open book test. And then you're asking them to actually incorporate some of this into their workflow because very much a skill nowadays is AI tool proficiency. And so in understanding and asking them to use these tools, you can understand how proficient they are in using AI. So what we have here, I'm going to morph my window a little bit. So on the left is um, myself as the interviewer. And so a few minutes ago, I was talking about letting a candidate in and using our waiting room. And so on the right, you can see I am now going to be candidate data. And I'm going to put in my email. You can read it right here. If you have any questions about our product, that's the email. Hit me up. And so I'm going to join the pad, and you can see on the left-hand side, this is our interviewer has been notified that candidate Ada has joined the waiting room. I'm going to admit the candidate. Um, and so in a sec, this will resolve. They'll get admitted in. There will be a quick overview. I'm going to continue without the transcription. I'll come back to what that is, but that's the note-taking feature that I was talking about a second ago. And here I am in the interview. Sorry for the uh, typically people wouldn't be doing a full interview in half a screen here, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is actually, so on the right, you can see I'm a candidate. On the left, you can see I'm an interviewer. And as I go to a different tab as the candidate, you can see candidate Ada has left the pad. As I come back, you can see candidate Ada has returned to the pad after 3 seconds. And if I was to paste from outside, you would see the similar alerts. And I guess not to sit here with split screen the whole time, what I'm trying to point out is this monitored environment. So what we are trying to bring to life and marry up is both the realism to give you the best signal, to allow candidates to use the tools that they have at hand, use AI, but also give you the trust that this is a monitored environment, that they're not leaving or bringing anything else from outside. And so that's how it comes together into a full experience that allows you, again, to understand and test them on those problems that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So at the end of this interview, I guess to shift over, what you're then left with is this artifact. And so I referred to this a few moments ago, playback. So what is happening behind the scenes over the course of this interview is we are recording every single keystroke. And so this is an interview that happened. It's an interview internally that we conducted. And you can see that every keystroke is being recorded and you can see the interaction. This allows you to both audit and understand what happened or even get at what a candidate was thinking, but from both a talent perspective or hiring manager perspective, you can come back and you can understand what happened within this interview. We provide a couple additional artifacts here. So on the right-hand side, and I'll make this text a little bit bigger, we provide a structured summary of, again, you can see some of the key details. This interview happened in April. It took 26 minutes. The time that Nick spent in the waiting room, maybe it can certainly be a bad thing if Nick spent 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a waiting room, as well as some of the suspicious behavior, some of those flags that I talked about previously, 5 left pad events, which you can then see over here in the timeline. Beyond that, I think, again, because we have structured all of this and we have, in this case, you have a full transcript of everything that happened within the interview, and it's interactable. So as you click it, it takes you to that moment and what was happening in the code. We have this summary over here, which allows anyone to understand how the conversation went. And beyond that, I think it also is something that we've purposefully designed to try and surface what happened in non-technical language so that you as a talent partner can understand how did this conversation go, even to understand, how was the communication. So the candidate asked a few clarifying questions. You can see that we've summarized all of this in hopefully what is a understandable package for you to, yeah, understand what happened in there. And this is all copyable, so you can paste this into your, wherever you have your system of record. Beyond that, we also offer another feature that is more designed towards engineers. If if that hiring manager is really wants to understand this candidate and how they approached this problem, we've broken down their approach to the code, and you can see that at this point, Nick attempted to update the to-do state, and we're summarizing all of that. And again, all of this is copyable, so this is a quick way to get jump started on submitting your review on this candidate. And so hopefully what this shows that we've tried to provide this full experience, and really hope to provide you with all the tools necessary using AI, infusing it within this realistic context, within this interview, but then also try to use it to help you summarize and understand what happened overall. And whether that's you're trying to surface, potential cheating events. I doubt that Nick actually solved all this by clicking away for 1 minute and 47 seconds. But maybe that's something you want to go ask, in this case, the interviewer, Aria, what happened. And maybe it just was nothing. And so we're bringing it all together in a package that hopefully you can use to accelerate and improve your overall interview process. So bringing it back to a close, we have both of these. What we walked through was our two products, our two interviewing products, Screen and Interview. Again, Screen being used, this is what Nathan talked about, more upfront, answering the question, can these candidates do the job? Versus the Interview product, which I was just walking through, is now getting down to the finer details of, is this the right person for this role? With that, I guess why don't we jump into the Q&A portion?
Great. So I have a couple of questions that have come through already that I'll go ahead and read out, but for everyone else on the phone, and now is a great time for you to go ahead and put your questions in. Additionally, Danielle, before we jump into Q&A, I think we have one more quick poll question that we want to put up. So I'm going to let this sit up here for about 30 seconds. So if anyone would like some help to stop cheating or to optimize their hiring process, please let us know. And we will have somebody reach out to help support you. Leave this up for just a minute. All right, Danielle, I think we can go ahead and close that and move on to these Q&A questions that we have. So first, and this either Nathan or Frank, this one is a pretty simple one. Feel free to jump in. For IP tracking, what's the impact if someone signs in while using a VPN?
I mean, the way I would think about the IP tracking is it's just a mechanism to make sure a candidate isn't hopping around a bunch, right? So as somebody who uses a VPN for a variety of different reasons, you could have a candidate, sign into a VPN that is in California 1 minute, and then they can be in Virginia the next minute. That would absolutely show up in the test history. We don't flag like, oh, this is a known IP address for a VPN provider. We just flag the different locations for you. So I think it's one of the nudges in product that it's supposed to be used as, is this person logging into a bunch of different places? And so if I'm a candidate and I do I'm connecting to a VPN provider on the Pacific Coast and then one on the East Coast, that'll show up in Screen. So no impact. They can totally do it if they want to. People, including myself, have privacy concerns, and that's why they use VPNs. And so that's totally an okay thing. We don't blacklist them or anything like that. It'll just show up as, they logged in one place to start, maybe another place to end. And that might be something you want to ask them about. And if the explanation is, oh, hey, I use a VPN, yeah, maybe that's okay.
Yeah, oftentimes with customers, we that last part, the follow-up question, like what was that? And I think that's where some of the details come out. And I mean, true real life use cases. Yes, we have seen a test that was sent to candidates in the US where there are very specific, requirements that this person be located in the US, be a US citizen, and so on. And then we see that the test, I'm recalling a specific case where the test was then opened up in Lagos in Nigeria. Okay, so that's probably bad behavior. And so I think those are the types of things that we hope to surface and allow you to, again, make that decision on.
Great. And then the next question is a little bit more involved. So, our engineering leadership places a lot of value on seeing candidates' ability to set up and navigate their personal dev environment. Many of our interview questions ask candidates to come with their IDE prepared and share what resources and dependencies they may need to install. As it stands, we do not allow any AI or LLM usage in our technical questions. We're beginning to explore and pilot some new questions that allow it, but worry about potential cheating and interviewers needing to detect it. How would you recommend making the case to leadership to make more use of CoderPad? We currently use it for a select number of questions.
Yeah, so I think on the first thing, I think there was a question buried in there about um, having a candidate show their ability to set up their environment. You can totally do that in interview. And I think by set up their environment means just install packages, customize the environment, bring some things in that the team uses that may not be installed by default. You can absolutely do that in CoderPad interviews. So if you're testing for those skills, you can absolutely do that. I would say it's not necessary to do it in somebody's IDE necessarily. And I think the other thing on the candidate experience part of that, asking a candidate to bring their personal machine that they may not be using for work most of the time and then set it up is sort of onerous, right? I mean, so I would be, if I were hiring for this role and somebody wanted to do this on my team, I'd be worried about losing candidates because of that. It's just more setup that they have to worry about. If you did it in CoderPad interview, it's all there. And if you want to test the skills for using NPM, for example, to customize an environment, you can absolutely do that in CoderPad interview. So that's the first thing. The second thing about making the case to leadership is one, I think detecting cheating is really about asking good follow-up questions. I think the easiest part about detecting cheating is if a candidate is just copying and pasting things all over the place and they cannot expand upon the solution that they've provided, right? So if you're doing a if I'm interviewing Frank and Frank is, I pose a question to him, he spends a couple of minutes doing something outside, he copies and pastes the solution in, and he can't expand upon that, it's pretty clear that, he's either using outside assistance or can't expand upon. The important part is the expansion upon an idea he's taken from somewhere else. Personally, I don't care if somebody's gone to Reddit or Stack Overflow or ChatGPT or Claude to get help with a solution, because that's what we do as software engineers. We don't it's not all up here as smart as we want to think we are. It's not all up buried in your head. Like all software engineers use outside resources to help them do their job. So I think the what I would really focus on is the interviewer training to really be able to follow up and dig into the details of how they've solved the problem, which you're going to have to do anyway to run a good interview. So I personally think that having an LLM in an interview would make it much easier to detect somebody who wants to cheat, because they wouldn't be able to expand upon the solutions they give you. And having it in a tool like CoderPad interview is completely transparent. You can see what they do in real time. Once the interview's ended, you can see exactly how they've interacted with the LLM to get help, and you can retrospect on it, which is great. And then I guess the other point on selling this to leadership is, if let's just say that leadership is hesitant to bring LLMs or AI assistive technologies into the interview, you're going to lose out on really, really good candidates who know how to move really, really fast with LLMs, because you're not going to get that part of the signal from the interview that is something that people do every day. The best engineers I know use AI extensively to help them go faster. And so if you don't allow that, and you don't allow engineers to use one of the things that is a normal tool that everybody uses now, you're going to be missing out on really good candidates. So I personally, that is the strongest case to make to them, I think, is that you're by disallowing a tool that everybody uses, you're missing out on really, really good signal for engineers who use it really, really effectively. It's just like, I would take the AI part out of it. It's just like asking a candidate to show up and perform in an interview where they can't use autocomplete. They can't use IntelliSense in any way, shape, or form to look up method signatures. You're taking a tool out of their hand that they use to do their job on a day-to-day basis. And so AI or not, you take that tool out of their hand, you are missing out on signal because you're not getting a real world perspective about how they would perform on that job because you're not allowing them to use those tools. So that's the strongest case I would make. You're missing good candidates if you don't allow for it.
Great. I have a couple of more questions that are in the chat, but I think we will have time for a couple more. So if anybody has any additional questions, feel free to drop them in as we're going through these. So the next one is, have your customers had any strong reactions to candidates enabling webcam proctoring?
No, to be honest, no, we have not. I think it's become more common practice in terms of the webcam proctoring, or just given a lot of the themes of the day. If you're interviewing somebody remotely, and just to pick on somebody on our team here, Mo, who has his camera turned off, like I think there is a certain precedent of like, hey, can you please turn on your candidate, and can you like wave your hands in front of your face to make sure you're not an avatar and so on. And I think those types of things, yeah. To be honest, we haven't heard very much. That being said, I will admit a lot of that, like specifically, I guess to define proctoring, there's proctoring in terms of like monitoring behavior and so on, and that we have that across the platform. We haven't heard anything. Monitoring in terms of having a big brother, big sister take pictures of you while you complete an asynchronous test. I think that I guess no, the answer is no, we haven't had any feedback or negative feedback on that, but I will by and large say that most customers use that type of functionality and that type of feature with more junior candidates. And I think, unfortunately, like the power dynamics with junior candidates is that they're less likely to complain. I guess ultimately we were very hesitant to build that feature, to be quite honest with you. I think it is a necessary tool, but we also ask that you be very judicious in trying to use webcam proctoring. We do want to abide by, privacy and so on, and just, yeah, treat our candidates in a very human way.
Great. So next is, what type of questions would you say are the hardest to cheat?
Oh, that's easy. Questions that are if the best interview is asking a candidate to solve a problem that they would work on day one in that role. So the hardest problems to cheat are the ones that are most realistic to your business, most realistic to the problems that you're facing on a day-to-day basis. And why is that? That's because those are unique. These problems are, a problem at an autonomous driving company is not going to be the same problem that you see at a disc manufacturer, right? Like, I know Frank picked on binary trees earlier, but balancing binary trees may be something that somebody at Western Digital needs to do in software engineering. Autonomous driving, not so much, right? So something that's, I mean, really the thing you want to think about is as close to day one experience for things that they're going to be doing as possible is going to be the hardest to cheat, because a solution to that unique problem does not exist on the internet.
Great. And next we have how is it determined that a problem was solved too quickly?
Yeah, so in our environment, what we take a look at is we take a look at, well, first we purposely structure our stats so that, or rather our question bank, so that if it's a 5-minute question, we, generally give you, we don't, if it takes you 4 minutes, it will give you 5 minutes. If it takes you 10 minutes, we'll give you 13 minutes and so on. And so that's how we've done that through prior testing. And then we continue to validate that across our population. And so we see candidate submissions, and generally, we'll then tweak a little bit. Is it like 10, give somebody 10 minutes or 12 minutes or so on. And so too quickly becomes very apparent in now looking at across this distribution. In the most extreme, if a problem we're giving somebody, like typically we give somebody 30 minutes and the bell curve, the median person takes 20 minutes, and that's and then like maybe the most awesome engineer in the world takes 15 minutes. I think what we then of course comes out is like somebody who takes 2 minutes is probably cheating. And of course that then varies.
Great. All right, so one more question, which is, I've had a candidate lie about past experience on his resume. Are reference checks still a good idea?
Oh man. Okay. I could rant about this for a while. I like reference checks because I'm going to start at reference checks and then go somewhere else. I like reference checks because it's just another thing to make sure, hey, are you who you say you are? Are you at least telling me half of the truth about your experience, what you've done before? Like, I don't, reference checks are useful for me just to validate, hey, this person says they worked in these technologies. Tell me a little bit more about what they did and how you worked with them. It's a little bit of bullshit detection, to be honest. Like, I also like to, because everybody puts everything on their resume. It's a good indication to say like, oh, this person put this technology on their resume, but their reference has no experience with them working on that. So that's something I would use to follow up with them and understand a little bit better. I mean, I wouldn't say reference checks are required, but it's just another box to check and to get more comfortable with moving forward with a candidate. So I don't know. I like them.
Oh, go
Well,
ahead.
sorry, I'd say in today's day and age that like it's becoming pretty mandatory to do a reference check, and I'd say it's certainly not mandatory, but like I encourage you to do your due diligence, much as a candidate will do so on you as your company. Doing your due diligence, doing your everything from a reference check to a background check is probably something that I would strongly suggest. Catherine, sorry.
Yeah, I would say that reference checks also give you a perspective into how to best support that employee once they come on board as well. So questions around, how can I best support this person, or what should I look out for? One, kind of bring up red flags, and then two, also set you up for success as part of the onboarding process. So I think you get a whole lot more out of the reference check process than just verifying experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Catherine, and that helps you structure, what is this random, 5 to 15 minute conversation in a more meaningful way. And yeah, I definitely love that kind of perspective. Like, how can I best support them? That through that you'll get maybe their strengths and their weaknesses from this third party and so on.
Yeah. All right, that was all of the questions that we have today, unless there are any last burning ones from the audience quickly. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.